Hey guys, we are back with another episode of our 10X podcast. Change the scenery on you yet again. We've got some sore, wobbly legs after a big day on some stairs at the Bristol Motor Speedway. We're coming freshly off of our stair climb, 9/11 stair climb that we do annually. As always, in 10X fashion, we were the #1 participating and fundraising team. As you can see in the front there, another plaque to be displayed up in our facilities. Morristown, thank you so much for sending a bunch of folks from your neck of the woods. Bristol, good turnout as well. It's always fun.
We'll send that to Morristown.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll take that. We got Morristown.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Walk in like Ric Flair.
Yeah, let's do it. I was thinking Simba. I thought you were doing Simba.
Well, as always, we have Dale and Steve. They came down from Morristown for the event and for this podcast, and myself and Justin. I think in the same order, the same seating arrangement, just with a little different piece of scenery for you. So our goal today is, like it has been for the past 2 episodes, we dug into a podcast that was in rather long format that's both educational and informative and eye-opening to us, and we hope that it is to you as well. And our goal is to take all that information, condense it down into a smaller format podcast, maybe throw some humor in, make it a little more easy listening, and teach you guys something perhaps. So as always, we're not medical experts. We're just deciphering information that we heard from others. So that's what we'll eventually get into. But anyways, let's get started. How's the legs feel?
Yeah, a little tired. 110 floors. Shout out to Sherry, freaking boss. Doing all 5 laps. It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So awesome. That was impressive. She's, 39 years young. To be able to do that. Pretty good, Sherry. Good. Robin got to do it as well. So, 5-pound baby in her.
Most mentally tough person at that facility today, probably.
In the state of Tennessee.
Good. Steve's first experience?
Yeah, that was awesome. I was about to say, what do you think about it? Well, I thought it might be a little harder than it was. There's definitely moments where mainly where I wanted the stairs to end going up. I'm like, oh, I'm tired of going up. I want to go down. And then when I went down, I was like, don't fall on repeat. So, but it looked really cool. I love the idea of the firefighters going full gear.
Yes.
I saw those guys kind of park off to the side every now and again. I was like, totally understand. Good work. But I thought that was my favorite part, was the amount of gear I saw. And then there was a guy in a cowboy hat, and I was like, that's American. That feels right. Good job.
Cowboy hat, FBI agent vest on.
Yeah, they were ready, dude. I loved it.
Kind of cool. How many was that for you, Jake?
3. I like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I think it's 3 though.
You normally come on your own, right? Like up here.
Yeah.
And we had how many from
I was
Morristown?
the Lone Ranger until this year, and now there were
10 or 12.
10
Also a dozen, yeah.
Yeah.
Traveled heavily.
Yeah. Well, Sally was good.
As always, a lot of cool kind of moving moments during it. Some good speeches to kick things off, explaining some things that have happened locally. Also, as we've mentioned in previous podcasts, the radio traffic that they play over, and they flash the pictures. Everyone wears the badge of a fallen first responder. So it's a moving day. It's like a strong dose of hero workouts that we kind of try to convey a similar message, except you're in it, right in the mix of people that are still performing those duties. So cool stuff.
Interesting wrinkle this year was with the tags. Did you guys notice that? Was never forget for people who died on the day of, and then there was always remember for people who died from complications there.
I thought that was in it.
I think it's a new change. I don't remember them doing that fast.
Yeah, and it seemed like the theme was
Of the value of counsel and mental health post 9/11. Thought a lot of guys fucked on that idea. I didn't expect it. But
Yeah, the guy that who worked from New York City, he was there talked last year. He usually does pretty well. He's a New York City firefighter. I think he said retired in 87 or started in 87. One of those two. Robin is talking about it. Should be able to correct me, and I'll put it down below. But interesting stories every year he's there, and nice guy to talk to during the stair call. I talked to him last year. Should be my show. Good group though.
Yeah, always.
slower start this year. I was looking, because of the nerd I am, at my lap intervals in previous years. The slowest start we've had and the fastest finish. So it was the full spectrum of the slowest you can walk because it was so congested.
Yeah, jammed up.
And then when things clear, you can buzz right through. Sub 12 was our last lap.
How long did it take you?
Hour and 20 this year.
What was last year?
Hour. Well, I was not around last year. I can't remember why. Year before was like 116. Year before that was an hour when we would be wide open.
Busted it.
It was hard.
You got a slam ball in the ear. Same weight, right? Probably
Same
30
weight.
on that shoulder. Cool. And a lot of people got to bring out the gear that they've been practicing with in week-to-week training on Wednesdays and things. And in some of our previous weeks, the rucks and the things, it was good to see. And we heard, obviously, this wasn't necessarily a test of fitness in the sense that we wanted to see how fast we could go, but definitely a test of fitness to see how you felt and held up. But they were saying how it's some of the best that they felt. It was like 2 or 3 people that have mentioned it was the best that they have felt.
Until you fell.
Come on now.
Cheers to you. You know who you are. We won't mention it.
Love you, bro.
If you're watching this, thanks for watching it.
He said, "Why didn't you catch me?" It's the first thing he told me.
How many flights of stairs was it today?
110.
110 flights of stairs. How many stairs are in that? I don't know.
2,200 and some change.
It's
That's total stairs today. Made it through every one of those.
The last one's a doozy,
To
baby.
walk off of the stage for a photo. Slid right down it. Slid right.
Comment below if you know who it was.
That's great. But yeah, and we'll do it again next year. We'll keep running it back. As far as I know, they'll continue having it at the Speedway. And we'll carry on every year. And this year there was not on Rhythm and Roots weekend, which was nice.
Way better, yes.
So
What they say today that the years they've done this, $384,000 is what they've raised for the Fallen Firefighter Fund, which is really cool.
Were there more people this year?
I would say it was busy this
felt
year.
that way.
Yeah, and I think actually helping with the registration the morning of, a few people doing that.
Right, stay up.
Don't hold me to this, but if I remember correctly, as the event organizer was talking during one of his speeches, he mentioned that this one was the most profitable, or maybe that's a poor word to use, but raised the most funds of all the ones that are hosted across the country.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's
Right.
true.
Say that right?
One of the most successful ones
Yeah.
nationwide.
It's cool for our small town, because I'm sure they have some of these in bigger cities and stuff,
Like
too.
New York.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Think about that. Brought to you by you guys, because we
Yep.
went 45 plus today.
45 plus, yeah, because we had extra show up. Yeah. Kudos, y'all.
It's a good bit of money.
Cats are gonna be sore, guys.
Yeah, I'm waiting on some
Yeah, well,
calves.
I was like, Jay, he's definitely got him.
he can obtain our soreness. So
Cool.
it's not having.
Outside of that, what's on the horizon for us? We do have some gear that's going to surface in the gym soon. You're going to see some shirts and some hats get posted up in the days to come.
Excited for both.
Yep. So
Both are sick.
as always, we're going to ask for pre-orders. Don't be the person that wishes they did but didn't.
Becca.
Hats will be in multiple colors. Just know, and we'll explain this further, that we have to reach a certain criteria or a certain amount of pre-orders for each color before we can send that batch off. So if you're interested, grab one, grab two. We'll have 4 or 5 color options for you. And then shirts will be some simple, sleek, classy looking stuff that I think you guys will like. So stay tuned for that. Am I missing?
Coast is clear otherwise.
Yeah, I think we're clear.
Competition.
I'm sure the holidays will be here before you know it. We want fall, but I'm sure winter will come before fall.
Yeah,
So-
give us ball.
yeah, I'd rather have fall.
All right.
Joe's programming tenure ends in a few weeks. Steve's begins.
Yeah, sorry about that. We'll see that guy. It's hard to follow that guy. What's out of his program?
Yeah.
All right, well, let's dig in. We're going to kick off today talking about a recent podcast that... Who came across that one first? Was that you, Jay? Did you share that one first? I know you and Steve are on it.
You're not on Instagram like us anymore. We were sharing some clips, I think, that kind of maybe got us going or something like that. I think so it was.
Okay.
Let's say deep down we envy you. No way.
I can't remember. Who was it? I don't know.
I suspect it was one of you two as well.
I think you, Jay, but I had already been watching it as well. But I think you're the one who shared it with us first.
It's good. Anything fitness or health or nutrition or big business, big pharma, big government, I usually just sucks me in like a black hole.
Into your algorithm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, speaking of which, I'll let you want to unpack kind of what this one's the gist of this one, who was at it, and etc.
Yeah, so Tucker Carlson had, they've also been on Joe Rogan. Andrew Huberman had Carrie. It's Carrie and Calley, right?
Casey.
Casey and Calley. I always mess it up. Meads, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
And Meads. I'm terrible. But very good. She came from a medical background and ended up dropping out of it the 5th year of her residency due because basically putting band-aids on amputees, meaning that they're not treating root causes of people's health, which should be what we preach, and just wanted to put band-aids by giving pharmaceutical interventions and keep getting paid and making money that way. He come from the lobbyist side, her brother. He worked for Big Pharma and was there lobbying basically for them and basically break down what's wrong with everyone's health, basically U.S., and I would say most of the world as well, but mostly the U.S. is what we're talking about today. But kind of go down rabbit holes, talking about where funding comes from, stats versus today versus back in the old days, back in the 40s and 50s, and just some insights there of health in general, and kind of rises a lot wrong with what we believe in and preaches to Jim. And I guess we'll break down that one by one by one by one. There's a lot of topics.
Yeah, so some very, very smart people. If you listen to the podcast, and we can share the link if you want to dig into the longer format. She was at Stanford. So she went through undergrad at Stanford.
9th year of residency or 9th year of med school.
9th year, yeah.
Was specialized in the ear, I want to say, or throat.
Yeah, and yeah, was finishing.
Right.
Now, and they came from a unique background in that their parents,
They grew up in D.C.
They grew up in D.C.
grew up in D.C.
Tucker Carlson, where
Yeah, the same road or neighborhood, right?
Yes.
This was really fascinating. Parents like celebrated the idea for them to think outside of the box and not conform to ideas, and so she stepped away from her career path, even though she thought she was going to climb the medical ladder and become a surgeon, etc. And instead, in the final moments, pulled back and reassessed, as Justin said. And the parents celebrated that. And then he was he Harvard Business School?
Yes.
So as you can imagine, both extremely well spoken, not just some Joe Schmo off the street, pulling stuff out of their back pocket.
Like us.
And yeah, like and they were engulfed in it. They both lived it and they both saw it firsthand. So it was really, really cool. So their credentials are there. And if you listen to the podcast again, Tucker does a really good job of kind of probing in. You wanted people to see, what it was that they had as far as their tenure.
Like why we should believe.
Right. Well, I listen to these people that who knows what they actually know. They know stuff. So, and they've been right in the middle of it. So that's probably worth mentioning for sure.
And she was president of her class, so it's not like she was just some average bottom of the barrel scraping to get by type student. She was a leader amongst her peers. And the way I interpreted what she said, she found herself at a crossroads between continuing down the path she began upon, head down, and trying to ignore all peril, or totally taking deviation, stepping away and working on an actual solution to what is a vexing problem, the healthcare system interwoven with bad incentives, insurance and pharmaceutical companies and food, and it's a very bottomless hole, which we can go as deep as we need to, but probably limited on time and resources. But worth taking seriously. Like Justin said, tracks along with a lot of the things we read over the course of time. It's almost like they're just finding critical mass, in my opinion. It's like the message isn't new, likely isn't new if you've been around us, but they have a little more weight behind their words. Maybe it's because they've made Tucker Carlson, or maybe it's because, like I said, that there's this tipping point where folks will begin to listen once you gain so many eyeballs and earballs of attention, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about changing. Greg Glassman put up a quote the other day. He said, we don't have a healthcare system. We have a diseased economy, and an outbreak of wellness can bring it all down. So, and we'll get into
Yeah, she even says in 2 years, she thinks if incentives changed in the right direction, that we would be the healthiest country on earth. Within 2 years, that can happen. But goodness gracious, where do you start?
I mean, probably I guess we could ultimately start on what they say the fix is. And it would seem like to be an easy fix in the sense of like just starting to teach people and educate people on how important, and this is not going to be new to anyone, but how important eating quality foods are, and avoiding the ultra processed and highly refined products that we eat every day and that the vast majority of Americans center their entire diet around. It's like when the food pyramid shifted to the, big chunk of which being refined grains, and having large amounts of servings of those. It's like that's where things started spiraling, or potentially started spiraling further.
And who created the food pyramid?
which
It's really interesting, right?
right, and then you'll see us circle back to these same themes of how interwoven this stuff is, and that was the message that they were trying to convey. But I guess the easy place to start, it's like they're not preaching anything crazy. They're just like, eat quality foods. It's the stuff we preach. Move, eat quality foods. Try your best to get your mitochondrial function, how your body creates energy, squared away and balanced out. No one has to be a robot necessarily. Never eat something they know they shouldn't, but like eat quality foods and move.
What was the biggest takeaway for you guys? Maybe that's a good start. My biggest takeaway wasn't the overall theme, which is nothing new. It was a lot of the statistics that they cited. That's what I was like, the percentage of calories that of the standard American diet that come from those types of foods, or the rates of autism, or the rates of obesity, or the amount of money we spend on healthcare, or like the behind the scenes look at the tobacco industry purchasing a lot of these big food companies 50 odd years ago, right before the institution of the FDA pyramid.
Yeah.
And the way the incentives become perverted.
Yeah. Probably worth expanding upon that idea.
Yeah, if you want some stats, the childhood diets now consist of 70% of ultra-processed food. That's cereals, all the stuff that goes through horrible manufacturing, filled with sugar, oil, sugar. Yeah. What else? 74% of adults are overweight. 50% of children are overweight or obese. 77% of Americans are unfit for military service due to these issues related to obesity. 50% of American adults have pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes. 30% of teens have pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes. In 1950, 1% of American adults had type 2 diabetes.
Say that again.
1950s, 1% of Americans had type 2 diabetes. And this is one of the things, like, me, if you've had any family go through health issues, you go to the doctor. Well, it's kind of normal when you get older. Like, it's not normal when you get older. Depends on which you were born, baby. And then most of that funds, 18% of teens have fatty liver disease. Fatty liver disease used to be only caused by alcoholics.
Late stage life alcoholics.
Yeah, abusive.
So that is one of those things that were high fructose corn syrup's been introduced into the diet. Your kids' livers are smoothing over and they're killing themselves, basically. You go to liver cirrhosis.
And it is normal after you've eaten that way your whole life.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
very normal to notice these changes. That's why it is normal for the doctor to say, oh, you're just aging. Well, if you've eaten well for those years, you might not have the same ill.
You look at a gym person who's 45 to 50, and then you go to Walmart, and you look at a person who's 45 to 50 and doesn't eat well, take care of themselves, they look like two different types of species.
We've got 2 different decades.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
20 years older.
18% of teens have fatty liver disease. I said that with 79% increase in young adult cancers. 25% of American women on antidepressants. 40% of 18-year-olds have mental health diagnosis. Highest infant mortality in the developed world despite 2 times the medical spending. 1 in 36 children have autism. California, it's 1 in 22. And 1 in 1,500 in the year 2000. So you think about that. You go to California right now, 1 in 22 kids have autism. In the year 2000, it was 1 in 1,500 with no change in screening.
Yeah, I was gonna tee you up for that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
No change in screening.
Yeah.
Autoimmune and PCOS peak rates. This is the most we've ever had. Polycystic ovarian syndrome is that what it's called?
Yes.
Basically, it's a metabolic dysfunction, and it's bad. So what else we got? The NIH tried to change PCOS to metabolic reproductive syndrome. Basically, it's a metabolic issue. If you eat right, exercise, sleep, take care of yourself, you can get rid of it. But they shot it down, changing the name.
It's way too clear that way.
Exactly, because we have to get money.
Yeah.
Infertility increasing 1% each year.
That the sperm count went down by 1% each year.
Babies end up, this is just looking to have a kid in October, and went from having, I don't know, I think when I was born, maybe 17 different shots for vaccines. Now it's 79. YouTube is primarily funded by Big Pharma. We're one of 2 countries that allow pharmaceutical companies to advertise on TV.
New Zealand's us.
Yeah.
Kiwis.
80% of NIH with National Health Institute grants have conflict of interest, and I can go on all day. Is anything else stand out to y'all that I missed?
I feel like that's the biggest hanging fruit piece that we could change. Advertising.
The advertising.
Pharma advertising.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a huge, easy fix.
Yeah.
50% of TB spending comes from pharma as well.
That was my biggest takeaway was it's one big circular force or government or however you want to think of it. It's basically, so you find out that the cigarette companies bought out the food companies and they hit you with propaganda, which a funny thing people didn't know is like back in like the early 20th century, women didn't smoke cigarettes and they would use propaganda and put women in movies smoking cigarettes, and women eventually started smoking cigarettes. So they took those tools and gimmicks and moved them over into food, and they made us addicted to different types of food. And now we're at 70% of ultra processed food to kids as soon as they get here. And then
The scientists that made the chemistry of a cigarette so addictive set sights on food to make the food as addictive and cheap to produce for human consumption. So they just moved the target from nicotine consumption to easy, hyper palatable food consumption, like Rob Wolf, if you read Wired to Eat. I mean, I lined all this stuff out many moons ago.
I think the best way to think of this is from a business standpoint. It makes sense when you think of it that way, meaning it only does Big Pharma good to have a kid come into this world and start giving it 70-something vaccines, right? And get it hooked or needing drugs or needing some sort of medicine and keep it on that loop for the rest of its life. Imagine the amount of money they can make per lifespan of the kid they can get hooked on something, right? So sadly enough, it puts them in a better position to have a kid get sick early. That's what I took from it, which is sad, but if you think about it from the money standpoint, that makes it all make sense to me.
We're not anti-vaccine, by the way. We're just saying that you have to question. We want you to think. We want you to question these things. Why are we doing this? Why? Because Joe Smo says this, that I should do this. You don't have to listen to us. You don't have to listen to us at all. But like Steve said, it's a carousel of us eating bad food. Or you got big food, big pharma here. There's another arrow that comes to us. We buy this. We eat this. We get sick. We get unhealthy. We go down here. We get pharmacological help, and then we go back and spend money on that. It's a constant feed loop of these people making continuous money all day.
Well, and then who do you trust more? Do you trust? I don't know about you. I'm sure you guys feel the same, but I won't speak for you. But I trust someone who's like, let's try to fix it by a simple eating right, sleeping right, whatever it may be. Before I trust someone who's like, let's jump on a pill, let's do a surgery. Yeah, that one makes me.
Oh, gosh. So Casey, which was the medical resident, did a pretty good job, in my opinion, of explaining how there was a unique connection between the things they were being taught and the outside space, whether it be the food industry or the pharmaceutical industry, how there was some funding and stuff leaking in. So those paths were starting to cross. But what I liked the most is she wasn't like throwing students or providers under the buses, maliciously making these decisions.
Right.
It's just an issue of like, how that system has now been created, or whenever it was created, how it's been continually taught in that way. So these providers come out thinking, or they're taught how to prescribe versus...
You only listen to one kind of music your whole life. That's the music you know.
Right. The thing that blew my mind away is a lot of those programs have zero nutritional courses throughout.
Right.
Well, and that's a big, in my opinion, should be one of the first things that you learn if you're a true believer in the body when it functions optimally.
They riffed on the idea of breaking the body down into systems as if it is like an engine to be solved. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but at one of the ancestral health symposiums or paleo things we went to years ago before they went the way they went, hit on that idea, really. It struck a chord with me, thinking not systemically, but holistically, as in the digestive system has no connection to the lymphatic system or your respiratory system or this or that. The way that she described the echelons of medical professionals, the more specialized you become, the more respect that you garner amongst your peers. And yes, that's great if you're trying to solve a very emergency, right here, right now type problem. Peter T would call that medicine 2.0 instead of medicine 3.0. But this myopic view of the specialist type medical practitioners doesn't allow them to see things like nutrition and the impact and exercise and sleep and things, look at the pillars that we rail on constantly, how that's just not part of formal training.
Yeah,
That's what I think.
Greg Glassman, I always bring back to Greg Glassman because he said what they're saying basically on this podcast 25 years ago, talking about normal people need a swim coach, not a lifeguard. You need to know how to eat properly. You need to know how to exercise. That's what we're here for. And then if you're super sick or something, yes, then you're drowning, you'll need that lifeguard. So that's exactly what you do. Oh my God.
Boy, we struck
If you know, you know. If you know, you know.
Hot top.
Terrible timing, but anyway,
Freudian slip.
we're still going to keep it.
It's a beautiful,
Yeah, but that's what we want you all to realize. There's no magic pills. There's no anything like that. But right, but no, it's good. It's like it's hilarious little humor for y'all in there.
That's what I picked up from what she was saying was coming back to the incentives. The incentives are wrong. So the incentives are quantity based.
Lead to bad behavior.
That's your boy Charlie, right? Is that Charlie Munger?
Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett both.
Yeah.
You can't expect the game to be played to be won. And if winning the game in our system is making lots of money, and making lots of money, and you can't expect people not to play by those rules. And pharmaceutical companies are great at playing by those rules.
Well, if you're a doctor, if you're
exacting those rules on.
if you're a nurse practitioner, PA, whatever, it's about how many people you see.
Well, you kill.
Yes, it's about how many people you see, not how many people you cure. And if we could get it to where how many people you cure, make it quality based, then we could change it. But again, it's a business thing.
The thing that made our country so good so quick, that's the unfortunate swing of the pendulum too far when capitalism reigns too far that direction.
It's the ugly side of it.
It's the unfortunate nature of make as much money as possible at all costs. Unfortunately, the cost is
Human life.
tell people incorrect information, get them to eat things, get medication to fix those things that they might have created themselves. Or it gets pretty interesting and pretty messy and pretty dark. She uses that term a lot, and as you're sitting there listening to it, it feels that way.
Yeah, so think of it like
How people could be that like sinister in their approach.
It's a Greek.
And I don't blame the system. I blame the people. Like, it's the people making those decisions to be, well, not capital system. I'll say it's the people choosing, like, your money means more to me than your life. Give me your money. I'm going to make money. It's terrible.
They're beholden to shareholders. The troublesome nature of capital.
And that's every one of the industries we're talking about.
Yeah.
Healthcare system, the food system, the pharmaceutical industry, all three of those. At the end of the day, they're all big businesses, and they all got shareholders to adhere to. And as Steve said, the sicker the person,
The earlier the sickness, the longer the time spent on the treadmill.
that's what I was getting ready to say. Like the way I was picturing this podcast when she was speaking was, and I want to go to more what he was saying too here in a second, but the whole cycle of it all, like you come into the world, and she talked about the fact that the very first thing you get was a hepatitis B shot, which is it's a vaccine for STD, right? And so a baby shouldn't need that coming into the world.
And one for chlamydia that's rubbed.
Correct. It's rubbed eyes. Yes. So you have that as soon as you get here. Then you get handed ultra processed food as soon as you're able to eat, right? And then there's all kinds of, there's aluminum and all kinds of extra things that are in the formula, all kinds of things. And then it's how quickly can they get you to pre-diabetes, things like that.
The lobbyists for the Diabetes Association are paid for by Coca-Cola.
Yes.
And Cadbury.
they're all together, intertwinings of all of that.
If you, there's a post that I had on my page a long time ago. Gail and I, we're coming back from somewhere. We stopped at a gas station that had a KFC in it, and they had a sign that said every gallon jug of cola that you bought proceeds would go to the National Diabetes Fund, which blew my mind.
Took a picture of it.
Yeah, I took a picture, and I thought, it's like, this is the most oxymoronic thing you could ever.
They used the analogy of Anheuser-Busch sponsoring AA. It's the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, like, think about it, you get these young kids, put them on their first medication, then they'll need one for another one. When my mom passed away, she was on about 20 to 25 different medications.
Yeah.
At 57 years old. Think about that. She had to spend an hour or two every morning taking a ton of pills.
She was making a lot of money.
Very unnecessary, but she fits in that system of
Her mother was that way. Where Casey's mother was in.
yes.
It was Casey and
Oh, yeah.
Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Those places.
What else?
and then no, it was like a esophageal cancer or some sort of cancer that was stage 4 that they found. She died 13 days later. They're like, we just couldn't predict it.
Yeah.
And then she kind of had this.
So she did everything right. She did everything we told her to do.
No, this was all predictable and mostly preventable. 90% of those diseases are preventable.
Yeah, especially chronic diseases.
This lifestyle.
There's a great picture. There's an old picture of a CrossFit gym. I can't remember where it's at, but it's like CrossFit TV screen, whatever the gym was, and they had a little logo below it that says "We cure type 2 diabetes," and like people online went nuts over, like, no, you don't. It's like, yeah, they kind of do. Like they could, if you listen to CrossFit's World Class Fitness in 100 words, it's basically
Bob Vick.
Yeah.
And you do it.
Exactly right. Bob Vick. Yeah, you got to do it.
And you do it.
Eat meats, vegetables, nuts, seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar. Practice and train all large lifts, blah, blah.
It's simple. That's
Yeah.
what I was trying to say earlier. It's very simple. It's kind of like
But it's
your
not-
car. It's not. Well, to me, I think of it like it's like if your car broke down. Your car breaks down, and you're like, man, it's got to be something under the hood. Well, did you check to see if if it had no gas? You start out with simple steps first, then you need to try to make it more complex if it is more complex. So instead of taking a pill to find a solution, why don't you go to the gym 3 times a week? You see what I'm saying? Like
Requires
simple.
effort, Steve.
That's true.
It does require effort, but you pay for it now or you pay for it later.
Exactly. That's another good topic is the cost to eat well. You know, everyone goes back to that and might be a little more expensive at the grocery store. Maybe. You could even do it without, honestly.
Dude.
People that make that argument, you could definitely argue against that. But you might run into the case where it's a little more expensive. But it's so easy then to just factor in the cost of all your health issues you're going to have to pay for, your
And
insurance.
the quality of your life in the interim.
How
All that space.
How dare you bring that up?
Watch your health span. We want to vote
You put me on that spot.
You remember Dennis Carr, don't you?
Yeah.
Dennis Carr said he was in church one time and said that the preacher said something about, yeah, I'd like to eat healthy, but it's so expensive. And said that somebody, what was the old Jack guy at Southwest? Not Tony Latito. There's an old Jack man. Said that dude spoke up. He says, "Have you checked the bill on a heart or a heart transplant or something like that?" And like yelled back at the preacher, and the guy's like, "Good point." And I was like, "There you go."
So true. Yeah, those are costs that aren't associated with that kind of stuff.
Right.
Those are kept separate from each other, when they should be woven very tightly with each other.
This is a question I was kind of bringing up to Robin about. Everything's intertwined. You got food, consumers buying food, getting sick, then going pharmaceutical route, paying for that, insurance going up, everything kind of the cycle thing. Do you think there's also lobbying telling people that, oh, they only need to walk for exercise as well, making stuff easier to combat chronic disease, trying to get people away from hard stuff like CrossFit? Do you think there's anything like that out there or not? Or that will happen one day in the future?
I thought most of the world is trying to go easier in some.
Yeah, let's be lobby.
Yeah.
No, it probably is just happening.
Because the NSCA and a few other companies funded by Coca-Cola went after CrossFit back in the day and tried to shut them down. Well, they'd only have, you can only train someone if you went through their company, another money grab. And CrossFit kind of shut that down. And CrossFit went hell or high water against Coca-Cola, which is what CrossFit needs now, in my opinion, is some sort of
Good question, Jay. I don't know.
because it makes me think, because all these studies, like I told Robin, I was like, it's like everybody talks about zone 2 now, zone 2, which I think zone 2 is great, but who is paying for these studies to showing zone 2, and does that help? That I tried to look it up, but I couldn't find any. So I'm wondering if y'all had any insight, or if we could figure out something like
It
that.
wouldn't surprise me if that were the case.
That's it. Well, all
But at the same time, like,
I feel like it all comes
Zone
back
2 is
to-
better than no 2, or no zone.
Sure,
Yeah.
of course. And it comes back to the same question. I mean, it's like there's plenty of studies that show that having X amount of Cokes a week is fine.
or alcohol.
Depends on who created the study.
You know, who funded the study, and that kind of ties back into the whole message.
Right. That's the whole.
Right.
And we're back to the whole
Lots of-
issue at hand.
Lots
here.
of the yarn that we're spinning
Is
on.
stop making it complicated.
Right. The incentive is to make a lot of money in our system, right? That's the way our structure is built, for better or worse.
Not our system, but
The American commerce system is built on the primacy of the dollar and its ability to multiply over time. And if you can rig the game in a way that predicts your outcome of the studies, then you can affect the science, trademark science, because at that point it is a trademark science. And then you affect all the hearts and minds of the people in the field as they disseminate information, whether they believe it or not. So it perpetuates itself across time, and it's a lot of momentum to push back against. I wonder how
Yeah.
it works.
Of course, those industries are huge.
you have to.
It requires some critical thought.
You requires critical thought.
Responsibility upon yourself, not
Yes.
not your healthcare provider.
Based on some easy metrics, probably.
Right.
The people who don't care to look like a
Outlier?
outlier. There we go. The outlier. All right, this study says this, but all right, let's repeat that. That's a good thing about the Broken Science Initiative right now. like they're taking all these studies and finding out that, well, how many, well, we read there were 10,000 studies last year retracted that could not be repeated in the science and medical field. 10,000 that were just like, all right, we're getting rid of these because they were fabricated. Like, that's where these studies come in. And anecdotal, if you look, feel, and perform better, as Rob Wolf would say, if you're happy, hungry, and horny, as Rob Wolf would say, like, you're probably doing something right. Was that Fitzgerald who said that? Okay.
True. Thanks,
Dude,
Oh, okay.
Thanks. It's birthday trade. The same birthday.
Do they? Yeah. That's wild.
It definitely ultimately comes down to those things.
well, it's funny we talk about basically capitalism, and so I'm a big fan of capitalism. I think most of us are. It pulls more people out of poverty than any other system that there is. But to mention what Galen was saying before, there was a story that Calley mentioned in that podcast about basically seed oils. Seed oils, which is like canola oil, and you guys can help me out here. There's a bunch of different corn oil,
peanut oil.
Yes. Okay. Now you guys see these in your ingredients that you're eating all the time. I know I do. It's in almost everything. And if you look up the origination of that is engine lubricant that's had the toxicity taken out. And so that come from John D. Rockefeller, which was the big oil titan back in his time, and arguably the richest man who probably ever lived, or at least in his time. And he wanted to use different means of oil products in order to keep selling different means of oil products.
No.
And so,
Seed oils are the top source of American calories.
yes. So that was mentioned in that podcast.
The hell back here.
And what's crazy is, to me,
Is that what it is?
you're just a few steps away from the engine lubricant. That's what blew my mind. And we're allowed to eat that.
Well, yeah, speaking of engines, sorry, we're at my house. We live pretty close to the Bristol drag strips. If you're hearing their cars go by, that's what it is. Gail's like, who's giving it hell in the background there?
Yeah.
We live actually further away than you would imagine, but it comes this way. On top of that, too, not only the oils, a lot of those foods were generated during wartime initiatives to try to create cheap food to help us win wars.
Sure. Right.
And then once those wars were completed, you had all these mass agriculture-based, farms and an entire new industry that didn't exist before going, now what? And then you start to see a lot of this very unique stuff start happening with food pyramids and RDAs, recommended daily allowances of grains and things. So another example of like somehow they integrated a big business structure into us as a society. And over time, as Justin quoted, in a lot of those statistics, you've seen nothing but health decline from that period forward.
And let's be clear, I don't think it's malicious.
No, and that's what I was trying to say about the doctor.
That's kind of what allowed us as a country to rise to where the point where we are. Like, we're very successful
Quickly.
profit driven is not a bad thing. And I'm not really against capitalism either, but we have to sometimes look at it a little more analytically. Be like, all right, here's where we landed. Where do we go from here? Let's just not continue marching towards the cliff's edge, because we're going to go bankrupt as a country, likely. With what percentage of adults are obese? 50 some odd percent.
Yeah, 50% of
And they're working to...
No, sorry, 74% of adults. 50% have pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, I think it's higher.
And they're lobbying currently to make Ozempic and GLP inhibitor type stuff legal for 6-year-olds.
And that's back to Steve's point. The quicker you
6-year-olds.
can get them on a medication,
Right. That's
the more money that is made across the lifespan.
It's just one big circle with a bunch of people who are friends that you would think would be enemies.
Right.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
So like if on what's funny is
Revolving door.
like on the drugs like Ozempic, a lot of those guys that end up being on the board for Ozempic were on the FDA board.
Well, I mean, if you guys watched the Sackler family documentary,
The opioid crisis.
so what is to make anyone who's critically minded think that a pharmaceutical company behaving in that way would not behave in the same way today, in the exact same way today, if the only penalty is a slap on the wrist?
And in the sense of
You may-
dollars to that.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, you make $15 billion, but we got fined $1 billion. You're still $14 billion.
You can turn your head away from all the negative consequences of your drug, but that doesn't affect your responsibility to your shareholders.
Which should then ultimately circle right back to you have a responsibility to, as an individual,
Yes.
to take care of yourself and to look at these things through a different lens. Because
Or through a secondary lens, like
just like that
even
opioid crisis, that stuff was told by the governing bodies that we trust that it was okay. The same ones that, what was it? The
Cigarettes search in their hands and said it was okay.
It was okay.
Right? We're a trusting society of our
cigarettes once upon a time were okay.
Yep.
So it's like you got to be willing to think very critically yourself.
Just ask a secondary question.
Eat good food and work out.
Yeah.
It's really sick. Well, it's not really that hard.
Rub elbows with your buddies.
Yeah, climb a bunch of stairs on a Saturday.
Yeah. Get your calves nice and sore.
Podcast.
I don't know. Like Gregor Glassman said, we have the cure for the world's most vexing problem, which is chronic disease. There's a book, Norman Kaplan maybe, called The Deadly Quartet. It talks about upper body obesity, diabetes, hypertriglycerides. Say that right? God, what's the other word?
Four Horsemen.
Four Horsemen. Yeah, what is that? Upper body obesity, insulin resistance.
Cardiorespiratory and neurological, heart and sugar issues. Those are 3, and then there's one more. Like, God, this should get up here. The 4 horsemen. What are they? Of death that are mostly lifestyle related.
It's not like we're trying to solve all the world's problems because we can't, but we would like for you to at least think for yourself and hopefully, like Justin was saying, research, on your own and keep things
Carefully.
Carefully. No need to be a conspiracy theorist, but you do need to watch what you are putting in your body. Another one, I know Justin's getting ready to have a kid, but Emily and I want kids. And another thing I think about is, will I let my children have candy or birthday cakes? I don't want to. I think that's basically active poison. And that's the way I see it. But that will be a very odd take to take with other people.
I listen to Savon talking about his kids and stuff. He's like, we don't have it in the house, but if they go to somebody else's house, it's fine. I think that would probably be the easiest way. If you don't have it, they can't eat it, and they're not used to it. They don't crave it.
I was listening also to bring a different podcast into the loop. It was a Rhonda Patrick podcast. I don't remember the gentleman's name. He was like Norwegian or something.
Protein guy.
The protein guy. And his take on a lot of that stuff was that we don't necessarily have a problem with fat, with carbs, with protein. We have a problem of excess.
Yes.
So it's like, if you're consuming any of those 3 in excess or doing really anything in excess, you oftentimes run into issues. So like you said, it would be very challenging as a parent to shelter their kid from the world and those type things. As much as we know it's not good for them, it's like, as long as we're not centering our life around those nutrition choices and stuff, I feel like you're probably going to be okay. Instill those principles and the ideas, teach kids about it. That's one of the biggest problems with the country, I would say, is that people truly just don't know. And that could be on the individual.
It's a country of convenience.
Yeah, and these are diseases of affluence. Like, these are diseases from being successful.
Yeah.
Whereas, historically, the centuries that predate the last 1.5 have always been diseases that are related to famine and pestilence and war.
Right.
Whereas now, sugar kills more people than gunpowder.
Yeah.
That was an article I almost wrote years ago. I never really put a pen to paper, but I thought that was an interesting idea.
Very true.
Yeah. It's more dangerous powder than gunpowder sugar is.
So
What about
talking
powdered
about
sugar?
Sorry.
Gunpowder sugar.
pixie sticks. The Daily Quartet I was talking about earlier: obesity, hypertension, glucose intolerance, and hypertriglyceridemia. God, that's hard to say for me. But he talks about those are the 4 things that's killing people, and it's all caused by hyperinsulinemia, which is basically processed carbohydrates. What they're talking about. This book was out in the 80s, talking about that. This was when the low-fat craze for dieting was really in, and sugar and everything's fine, but we'll take out the fat, and you'll be healthy, and that's when
Fat makes fat. Didn't you know that, bro?
Exactly. But basically, elevated insulin over time is what's causing all these things. I would probably agree with that for sure. Absolutely. So, don't do it. Simple as that. If you want to have a 90-10 rule, like that's the like if
Even 80-20.
yeah, or even 80-20. Some people are different. Some people may need like a almost like I hate to say it, but like an alcoholic. Like you're going to have to maybe cold turkey for a while, and then it'll be a little bit easier to maybe to come back, or you just stay off it forever. Everybody's a little bit different, but figure out what works for you and feel perform better.
I was going to say, be careful what your government tells you. What I was just thinking, my grandmother, if I go to her house, she's 80, I think she's 80 years old, and she still drinks skim milk because she's afraid to have any fat.
Because she trusted the
She
profession.
trusts, that, and then they eat with something called no salt.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
because they're not allowed to have salt.
Yeah.
And I cannot talk her out of it, right? Nor should I try. I mean, at that point, she's that old where she's not going to change. But I just think it's very interesting. My grandmother has lived that long, and she was told that long ago and stuck to it that long.
Yeah.
Is she on any medications?
Do you think you'd be willing at age 80 to change your mind about something? Are you willing at age 30 to change your mind about something?
It's hard.
This is a real thought experiment.
Yeah.
Where would you be willing to change your mind right now if you were pointed out? Pointed towards a direction that may be less wrong.
I think it comes down to what Jay said. Like, if you can, like, prove it. Like, with her, I could prove it to her. I can make her healthier. If she would give me a shot, right?
Yeah.
But I guess
Here's a nod. You point her towards research, and we just said all research.
Right.
Everybody can find
Well, I would say
an article to back up the article.
It pisses me off.
Everybody has dollars to fund a research.
Some people
project.
have more dollars.
Right, that's the thing. Like, you end up just crossing your eyeballs. But what you were saying is look, feel, perform. Like, give it.
Yeah.
Hey, Granny, let's try this. Let's just see. Let's treat it as an experiment. Sure. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying you're wrong. Let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
I think one of the worst and laziest intellectual arguments is when people say peer-reviewed studies or case studies and this says this, but it's like, all right, anecdotal means nothing. They're like, anecdotal, that's all anecdotal. It's like, it works. It works. Like, work out, eat, sleep, drink water.
Yeah, and that's the only way I've ever learned. Like, you could tell me to do something, and you can show me how to do it, but I have to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, in other words,
That's
that's
the same way, Steve.
yeah. So, even if I did read all these studies or whatever, I'd have to find out through my own means to make sure that was right. At least for me. Not saying it's right for everybody, but that's what I would do with her. I'd be like, let's try this and just see where we go.
You have to kind of gamify it in a way that encourages behavior change without strong arming people. That's what I've learned, especially people who are older than me. Because what does a younger person know?
That's a fact.
Good quote I found. We're trying to give you some actionable steps to do, but Seth Godin had a quote that said the shortcut is usually the longest way to get somewhere. The shortcut is usually the longest way to get nowhere. All right, basically, so if you're taking the magic pill, I mean, we hate to bring it up in a zip book, something like that. Unless you change those root causes, you're still going to have problems long term. Change your lifestyle, change the way you view food, change the way you view life, anything. No magic pills. And then there's another message that
Start Quilinus and Venator.
exactly
Sums it all up.
yeah.
We're really like beating our sabers together up the same stuff we've always said.
The bill you skip today is the price you pay in the future. So
Yeah.
it's put in the work, guys.
Hard choices, easy life. Tough choices, hard life. These are a really recurring theme in everything that we hold dear, in my opinion.
You take today's example. Like, we get 40 plus people. We're going to go walk steps for
Hour and a half.
an hour and a half. Like, you take a normal American person and be like, hey, you're going to go do this, and it's going to kill them. Like, it's going to kill them because they're so unhealthy. Where if you go back 100 years, people working in farms, fields, stuff like that, they'd be like, yeah, this is no big deal. We're just walking for an hour and a half. Versus, like, we're like, oh, this is exercise. It's so crazy how things have changed.
I eavesdropped on a conversation between Logan and Calley today. She was kind of talking about being cold, hoping it doesn't rain, and Logan was like, I hope it does. I hope it's miserable. Why are we here?
That's beautiful.
I was like, smacked it on the tail. He didn't know who it was. It's me. That's exactly what I'd like to hear you preach it.
It's freaking awesome. Good job, Logan. Good job, man.
And she wasn't complaining. I don't want to paint her in a bad picture either.
You suck, Kelly.
It was refreshing for me to hear.
That's awesome. It's
Actual steps. Easy stuff. Stuff we
Whole
talk
food.
about all the time. All food. And we can talk about the ones they specifically mentioned to avoid, which you already mentioned them once already, but we'll hit them again. It was
Ultra processed carbohydrates, seed oils.
seed oils. So any kind of ultra processed grains, the flours, anything that's been milled and powdered and, turned into a very, very rapidly digestible carbohydrate.
how do you know if the food you're eating has that in it there? You look at the label. You can read, guys.
Do you recognize it as a food?
That's right.
Right.
Exactly.
Sure.
As a non-processed food. Like oatmeal, I think's fine, right?
Yep.
Right.
Rice, it's okay.
Right.
You can live cheaply, guys. You can get a huge pack of chicken from Sam's or Walmart and some rice and some oatmeal, and you can live pretty cheap for a week if you are going to be okay with putting hot sauce, a different type of hot sauce on the change of flavor, and some fruit. So don't eat those two.
We already talked about the seed oils. Those are pretty clear. We know those. Do your best. I mean, if oils aren't bad, those types of oils aren't good. We know the olive oils and the coconut oils and the avocado oils. Those things, they go through a very small refining process. So, don't be too terrified by something that's been modified slightly, but it's not rocket science. And then obviously just stay away from those easy, again, digested sugars. That was the three, right? So that's the roadmap from a nutrition standpoint.
Yeah, eat simple food ingredients, ones that, again, you can actually say and that you recognize. And it should be, I always think 5 ingredients or less in a meal or a product is always a good idea. And then get to the gym, get out of breath, do something really hard at least twice a week, right? Cardiovascular is what you were referring to earlier. And then if you want to do some walks, lift some heavy weights, but do some walks after meals. There's a lot of good studies behind that. And that's great for digestion. But don't replace the hard stuff with the walking.
And that was kind of a callback to a post that we kind of discussed amongst ourselves, not confusing activity with purposeful exercise.
Yes.
Like movement is not training. It is movement, it is useful, but it is not training. Training with an intention, with a purpose.
Yeah, that's low-hanging fruit expected.
Right. That's just living.
Yes.
Do both. Yeah, for sure.
Sleep a lot.
Sleep, see sunshine, look at the sun.
Do your best to have good sleep hygiene.
Yeah.
A lot of it starts with that. People I know a lot of times struggle with being able to turn it off, and some people struggle more with that. And some of it's sleep hygiene related, others it could not be. It could be used an individual. We're not saying this is a one-size-fits-all approach, but there are definitely steps you can take, and they're easy doodles. It doesn't take a whole lot of research and a deep dive to find out how to properly sleep or sleep better.
There's stuff that your great-grandmother did, great-grandfather did. Things like that's the way I think. Yes. Like, what were they? That's the way they lived, essentially.
Throw this thing out the window.
Yeah.
Well, for a lot of reasons.
And we mentioned Ozempic earlier. To me, it makes more sense for you to at least try. I know it's harder to eat right and sleep than it is for you to say, I'm going to eat terribly, not sleep, and take this injection instead. That's kind of
It's an easy route.
It's an easy fix, but
If you notice, Peter T shared something the other day, and I shared it on my Instagram, talked about the benefit of muscle mass. We talked about this on a previous podcast. He had 10 people on Ozempic or some sort of semaglutide. What's it called? Yes,
Gone like some peptides.
Yes, they'll go on like Pepton, GLP. Normal person loses about 10 pounds. They're going to lose 3 pounds of fat. 3 pounds of muscle, 7 pounds of fat.
yeah.
Semaglutide, you're going to lose 7 pounds of muscle, 3 pounds of fat, which is basically you're not decreasing your body fat percentage. You're just losing muscle, which sucks. And Peter T talked about the benefit of having more muscle mass when you're older. We talked about insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia and stuff like that. More muscle mass you have, the better you are at retaining those carbohydrates for those muscles and producing less insulin, so staying healthier longer, not having to worry about that. He said what a teaspoon is the difference circulating in your blood from a normal person and a type 2 diabetic, which is really, really wild. But if you have muscle mass that's going to absorb that versus just free-floating in your system, it's going to be better. So,
You can fall.
Yeah.
If you have muscle, you can fall and not die.
Yes, true.
Yeah. And you can fall on your diet.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like you're more than likely going to have better metabolic function because your body's needing those things, more calories because you're fueling rockets like these and calves like those.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah. And these pellet rifle. So if you're dead set on utilizing a substance like that, a pharmaceutical, whatever you want to call it, like the Ozempics, at very least, do your best to incorporate or make a few lifestyle changes after or during, or else you're right back on track whenever you do decide, if you do decide, to come off of that stuff. There are some people, I think, after all this podcast, it's probably hard to say this, but I would like to think that the person that designed that might have had good intention to truly help a diabetic.
Absolutely. That's right.
Because we have to understand that the leaner the individual, generally speaking, the healthier and the longer they're going to live. It trumps obesity.
If you're 400 pounds,
right, that's
you
a good
need
tool.
something.
Sure, it's a great tool. Surgery is a good tool. Problem being is it didn't fix anything other than you being overweight.
There's the difference between a lifeguard And a swim coach.
Dude, you both made the 2 points I was getting ready to make. I love it. It came right back to that. The swim coach versus the lifeguard, right? The lifeguard's when things are too late. The Ozempic is when things are too late and the guy can't even move and he needs to lose weight.
You don't drown.
And again, we have done phenomenal things through science.
Sure.
Phenomenal.
And there's a lot of pharmaceutical drugs that have really helped a lot of people, you know, and they are also money driven, but they still did good. You know, it's fine to say that. This is not a shot at all the physicians and the pharmaceutical folks and the food industry folks because, you know, food's cheaper for better or worse, you know, in the case of that. But it's not, you're not fixing anything.
There needs to be a moral code behind some of our systems. That's the way I would think of it.
Yeah. That's a loss.
But who creates the art? Here we go.
So we got that. We got community next.
Yeah, community. Huge. Big part of it. We're just still back circling to the pillars. So we talked about food. We talked about movement. Community. If you're listening to this, you're more than likely a gym member. If you're not, come join us. Here, come see us. But our community is obviously one of the biggest parts. It was on display today. It was a community amongst ourselves, 45 plus of us, but then ingrained in a whole other, you know, community that, you know, we're out there hustling for a good cause. But our communities, we hear this all the time. We've probably talked about this on this podcast before, but how many people do here go to other gyms and test them out? And this is not a shot at other gyms because it can be tricky to navigate a drop in, but then they're like, it's just not the same. Like the community felt different, you know, because
I got that text last night from Lily. She was in Chattanooga.
yeah, she's like, it was great. The workout was great. I loved it. It just wasn't the same. Like, you guys do such a good job of embracing it. And it's because you guys, you know, take after these fellas who have created this thing and welcome people with open arms and stuff. So the community is a huge part. It's a support system.
Unlike the government, big pharma, and big food.
We look out for you.
Yeah, we want you to be as healthy as possible.
Right.
If we don't, you're not a dollar sign to us. You are a member. You do pay us, but we are not. That is not our goal. Our goal is to make you as healthy and as happy as possible. Live that 10x life. Be an outlier. All that stuff we always preach. So,
If it was about
the place to test your ideas.
yeah.
If you have, we don't have many answers, but we've got a lot of mistakes and wrong answers. We can point you the other direction of don't go that way. It's the dead end. You know, that's the biggest benefit of community to my brain. It's like,
Well-
you're correcting me. You're helping me be less wrong because I
Yeah.
have lots of opinions that I trust and value.
well, in a world full of like going a bunch of different pathways towards destruction, in my opinion, I'd rather hang out with a group that's building towards something. And that's the way I've always seen it. So like, I weighed 315 pounds until I was 18 years old. And I got around people who ate right. Then I started to change and get away from those bad, I guess those different bad tracks I was on as far as, you know, getting off the wagon, so to speak. And then I was able to make it normal. So I don't even think about those things now. Like, you know,
Les Tarrant has pizza.
Les Terrence got pizza right in front of me. Yeah, but those things don't even cross my mind anymore. And that's
80-20, boys. 80-20.
It's about who you hang out with. I mean, that's really cool.
Caloric deficit we're all in today, I'm sure, is
Yeah.
pretty excessive.
And cheer each other on in the gym, man. Like, if you see someone, you're finished, like, cheer someone on if they're struggling. We got some newer people, and they're kind of stumbling along, trying to figure everything out, steep learning curve. Give them some encouragement, tell them they're doing great. One that kind of sticks out, Jacob, man. He's been crushing everything.
I hope you're listening.
Absolutely. Pope sent me a Snapchat today. So I seen Jacob running up the 800-meter hill about 200 mile an hour. So cheers to you, Jacob. Keep it up, brother.
That's why we do it. Make those changes, people. It was a classic example. If you are watching this, if we don't have me sharing as a physician and was like, you got XYZ on this, you know, lab work here, we got to get corrected. And he's like, what do I do? She was very, whoever you are out there,
Yeah,
physician,
we love you.
She shot him straight to a CrossFit gym. I think she even mentioned ours because she had tried it out once upon a time or had been there. Sure enough, he follows through and he hasn't missed a day since and is making changes big time mentally and physically. So that's the healthcare system we need right there.
Yes.
Maybe that's the ultimate, you know, message.
Care for someone's health.
Right.
Built into the word.
Y'all
I
fired
mean,
up.
what if that insurance rate lowers if you can run a mile in under 10 minutes?
Should. You'd have to think that it would make sense dollars-wise for them.
That's the thought.
Yeah. Yeah. So, cool. Did we cover our pillars?
So,
Pretty good.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. I know we went here, there, and everywhere a lot of different times. That was the gist of the podcast. If you want to tune in, we can share the link below. It's that same concept, except she delivers it beautifully. She speaks well, as does her brother. Tucker does a good job of guiding them along. You'll hear some additional statistics and stuff that we didn't get around to sharing. So tune into that one. And again, as always, if you have any other podcasts that you want us to dig into and then try to expand upon, please send them to us. We would love to hear from you guys. That tells us that you're getting something out of this and interacting. But until then, any final words, fellas?
Pay now or pay later.
There we go.
Tagline? Pay now or pay later. Signing off, guys. See ya.
Cheers.